Miami Dolphins have agreed to a 4-year, $212 million deal. Deal will include $167 million in guarantee. Now sitting behind the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, ahead of Jared Goff, Justin Herbert.
This is one of the most divisive contract extensions I think we've ever seen, because some people are saying this is a gigantic overpay. Some people are saying this is the perfect contract, and I'm here to break it all down for you guys because we've been following this saga all summer long. So before we get to the content, we are still giving away copies of College Football 25. If you don't have the game, I highly recommend it. It's so addicting, and all you have to do to enter is follow me on Instagram or on Twitter. Links to the giveaways are in the description down below. Now that we get all of that out of the way, work! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Tua's contract extension is very significant because prior to his contract, the norm was to pay each and every quarterback as much money as humanly possible, whether it made a lot of sense or not. And a good example of this goes to the 2022 offseason, where the Denver Broncos traded for Russell Wilson and paid him a 5-year, $245 million contract before he even stepped foot on the field for them. Or how about the Cleveland Browns trading multiple first-round picks for Deshaun Watson and then giving him the first fully guaranteed quarterback contract that averages $46 million a year annually. And of course, Kyler Murray, coming off of a very embarrassing playoff loss at the hands of the Los Angeles Rams, had his agent type up a 5-paragraph essay with 6-point font asking for a huge contract extension. And the Cardinals obliged. But the very next offseason, you would see Jalen Hurts getting paid $51 million a year annually, Lamar Jackson getting paid $52 million a year annually, Justin Herbert getting paid $52.5, and then right when the season was about to start, Joe Burrow got $55 million a year annually. And the argument for this is the fact that they're the quarterback, they're the most important part of the team. But also, if you go back throughout NFL history, anytime a quarterback is the highest paid QB in the NFL, while he's on his max contract, or at least in the earlier part of his max contract, while he is the highest paid QB in the NFL, he won't win a Super Bowl. Now, I want you to pay attention to the verbiage I use there, because Trevor Lawrence technically is still on his rookie deal for another year. And typically, the window of contention for these QBs is swung all the way open towards the latter part of their contract because their contracts become undervalued, which is why Patrick Mahomes is having so much success lately, on top of the fact that he's freaking Patrick Mahomes. And it's a huge reason why there's a huge question mark in regards to what you're supposed to do when you have a quarterback that is eligible for a brand new contract. Now, at the same time, this summer was very significant for quarterbacks because this is the very first time that we've seen quarterbacks that are eligible for contract extensions that aren't necessarily considered to be the best QB in the NFL, but they are good enough to potentially get your team to a Super Bowl. One of them being Jared Goff, and the other being Tua Tagovailoa. In the case of Jared Goff, you have a much larger sample size, and you've seen consistent improvement in his game ever since he went to the Detroit Lions. I mean, the man threw for over 4,400 yards in 2022 with 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and this past year he threw for over 4,500 passing yards, completed 67% of them, 30 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. He was able to get the Detroit Lions into the NFC Championship and came very, very close to taking them to the Super Bowl. Whenever a quarterback does that on a contract year, it's a no-brainer he deserves to be paid. But it's obvious that Jared Goff doesn't really deserve to get paid more than Joe Burrow does. So Jared Goff got $53 million a year annually, which put him right above Justin Herbert, but below Joe Burrow. Next contract extension that we got was actually very significant. Trevor Lawrence's contract extension was not expected for another year, maybe even 2 years. And if he really wanted to gamble on himself, could have just waited as long as possible, the same way Lamar Jackson did. But he decided to sign this contract extension in a year that was make or break for him. There's a huge question mark in regards to Trevor Lawrence's ability right now. And although I'm a huge believer in him and I think he could get the job done, done and he was dealing with injuries last year, it's very interesting that he opted to sign a contract that ties him with Joe Burrow when he's on his rookie scale contract for another 2 years. Regardless, whenever you could get these contracts done sooner rather than later, it ends up paying off in a very big way, because currently the Dallas Cowboys are still trying to negotiate with Dak Prescott, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets paid $60 million a year annually. But in the case of Tua, you have a very unique situation, because on one hand, Tua struggled during the Brian Flores era, but in comes Mike McDaniel and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and next thing you know, he's averaging 273 passing yards per game. And 1 year later, he's throwing for over 4,600 passing yards off of a 69% completion percentage, 29 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions, making it to his first Pro Bowl and finishing top 5 in comeback player of the year. But at the same time, you're having people ask Mike McDaniel this question.
There are some folks who believe that many quarterbacks in this scheme, with you as the coach, with Tyreek and Jalen, maybe even many quarterbacks would excel, would flourish, would be near the top of the passer rater leading MVP candidate. What, if any, pushback is there relative to, wait, no, hold on. Tua is a little different.
Let's push this podium over. My answer to that would be, who the F cares? Because it is a team. We're working together, and I know one thing. I've coached stuff a long time. I haven't seen people do what our guys do.
Which is a very excellent question. Could another quarterback just take over for Tua for half the price and possibly deliver the same results? And you could invest that capital elsewhere. Well, it doesn't seem like Mike McDaniel really cares that much, because after a holdout with the Miami Dolphins, Tua and the Miami Dolphins officially agreed to a contract extension. So according to Ian Rappaport, the Dolphins and Tua have a deal, agreeing to a 4-year, $212.4 million contract extension to lock him in long term. At long last, Miami's franchise QB is paid like it. I mean, first things first, man. Anytime a quarterback gets paid, anytime anyone gets the bag, I'm happy for them. So we're just gonna take that aside and discuss whether or not this is actually a good deal. Like I said before, Tua's sample size is very small. You pretty much only have 2 years with Tua in the Mike McDaniel era that you could really count. And in those 2 years, he's been injury prone and hasn't had any success in the playoffs. He has not been able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which you could tell based upon Tyreek Hill's interviews how badly Tyreek Hill wants to beat the Chiefs.
Chiefs Kingdom, when the Miami Dolphins come to Arrowhead Stadium this year, guess what we gonna do? Guess what we gonna do? I hate to say it, man. I hate to throw up the peace sign against y'all. I hate to do it. But guess what? I'm gonna be y'all worst enemy that day. And
at the same time, he has this all-world supporting cast around him. I mean, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert in Mike McDaniel's rushing attack. And despite all this, so far, the narrative surrounding Tua is he's dominant in the regular season, but can he do that in the postseason? And the reason why this is concerning is, I always say, whenever a quarterback is on a rookie scale contract and they're having trouble succeeding under the rookie scale contract, it's kind of bizarre to expect them to start to perform in the postseason at all once they get their big payday. And the reason for this is simple. Once the quarterback gets a huge payday, the pieces around him are going to get considerably weaker. And you already saw the Miami Dolphins make some cuts this past offseason. I mean, Xavier Howard left, Jordan Poyer's in, they couldn't keep Christian Wilkins, they brought in Shaq Barrett, but Shaq Barrett recently retired, but they also made some pretty nice acquisitions as well. I mean, Jonnu Smith is amazing whenever he's fully healthy. Odell Beckham Jr. at the very minimum should be a nice locker room piece. They signed Calais Campbell, who just refuses to age for some reason. And apparently this defense, who was really good on paper, didn't really gel with Vic Fangio. So they're hoping that Anthony Weaver can be their difference maker this year. So whether or not this is truly Tua's fault is a different conversation for a different day. But at the same time, I could understand fans having some reservations over the fact that Tua just got this huge contract extension without really having any postseason success to show for it. At the end of the day, you're not going to see this contract really affect the Miami Dolphins until next offseason, and the cap hit doesn't typically become significant until 2 years from now, or maybe even 3 years from now. Unless if you're the Dallas Cowboys and you decided to backload the contract, so it could fuck you over once it's the end of your quarterback's contract. But I don't think the Miami Dolphins are as dumb as the Cowboys. So do I think this is a good contract? To be honest, for Tua, I think this is the perfect contract. He technically becomes the third highest paid QB in the NFL. He's already behind Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. He's pretty much at the same level as Jared Goff. Then you have Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, who are easily going to beat that contract as well. I mean, this is very solid for Tua. And to be honest, bringing it down anymore would just be penny pinching at a specific point. I mean, is it that much of a difference if he's getting paid $53.1 million a year annually as opposed to say 52 like Lamar Jackson? The next big jump would be $46 million a year annually, and that's not going to happen. But if you guys want to know who's really screwing up their contract situation, look at the Dallas Cowboys, because this is a brand new level of ineptitude. And the craziest part is Jerry Jones compared himself to Patrick Mahomes when it came to negotiating contracts, which as a Cowboy fan drives me even crazier. And if you guys want me to break down how pathetic my team is, I'll leave a link to that in the end screen. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.